Believe it or not, we're still in Redbandia. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'm Scott. This is Redbandia Outdoors. I've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about a big dam, not close to the Deschutes, water quality, how all that kind of ties together. But there's a cool, interesting water quality story behind this dam. I think from an information perspective, you'd be happy to know this and include it into your thought process on how you think about where the Deschutes is going and how you can chime in and be the best advocate for the things you love. So again, thanks for tuning in today. Let's get right to it. I'm going to go through the unique features and things about this dam that make it an interesting story. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the fish populations here in the river. I'm going to give you the goods right off the bat, the conclusion, the thoughts that I want you to think about. And then obviously I'm going to plug my channel and these cool t-shirts and stuff I sell over at my store so I can continue to fill up the gas tank in my van and go have some fun out there and tell you guys stories about trout and all kinds of other cool stuff. So if you like this, just like the last video, we did really well. Hit that subscribe button, give me a comment, like this video, tell me what you're thinking. Let's get started. So at the end of this video, it's really not my job to tell you what you should be thinking. I think it's my job to tell you those things that you should be thinking about when we're talking about conservation of our greatest resources, the fish, the wildlife, the water, the habitat, the land. And so I want to give you some information here that at the end of the video, it's kind of the conclusion, the question that you might kind of be scratching your chin or however you do it, because this is what I came up with. And that's back on the Deschutes, where we're talking about water quality issues associated with temperature and nutrients. Did we ask the question and we do the detailed science to understand the impact of the nutrients, or did we just do the changes and see what the impacts were going to be and see if anyone noticed and see if they were going to speak up about it? That's really the question I have after studying what's going on here at this dam and thinking about how the scientists approach the problems they're being faced with at this dam and the river here behind me. So back on the Deschutes, did we go into it blindly, or did we go into it knowingly, just hoping people wouldn't notice about the incredible Hulk green water and what it might do to the river downstream? I'm not really sure what the answer is. I'm not picking one side or the other or pointing a finger here or there. That's just a question I come up with after I do some research and discussions here with this dam. So that's basically the point of this video. Now we're going to go into a great story on fisheries, water quality, watersheds, and all that fun stuff. So if you want to chip out and leave, great. But if you want to stick around and get a great story, I totally appreciate it. If you like what you're hearing, hit those buttons. We'll keep these videos coming. So if you don't know where I'm at today, that's Libby Dam right there, and that's the Kootenai River. So this is extreme northwest Montana. Libby Dam is about 422 feet tall. So it's about 100 feet less than the Round Butte Dam that we were right next to the other day, talking about water quality on the Deschutes River. So it's not in the top 25 dams as far as height in our country. But the lake, and I'll show a small picture of it, a little clip that I got this morning cooking breakfast up above the dam. It's a little smoky, but it creates about a 90-mile long lake called Lake Kootenai that stretches out of Montana into Canada. And that's the Kootenai River coming out of Western Canada, which basically drains the spine of the Rocky Mountains in British Columbia and Alberta, and drains down in here into Montana and forms Lake Kootenai. And they named it basically from the Kootenai, Canada, and USA. Well, that's us, USA. So Kootenai, pretty cool. It's a massive clear water, cold water lake. But the one thing it does, like many dams do, is it's a nutrient sink. And in the case of this water body, the phosphorus that comes down from the glacially formed watersheds upstream binds with the sediment and sinks to the bottom of the lake and becomes unavailable in the river downstream. As opposed with the Deschutes, it seems that the phosphorus and other nutrients that are in the lake, because of the three rivers that come in and maybe mix it, or whatever it is, those things seem to bloom in our naturally high volcanically derived geology in Central Oregon, where we know it's layers and layers and layers of volcanoes that came and formed that land over time, and then windswept soil blew in and gave us the small soil layer that we have here. This is much different. This is a glacial carved environment, rose up through fault block mountains, and then was carved by glaciers. And so it's this grinding of the environment that then gets washed downstream. So looking at the river behind me here, you know, we'll get into a little bit of the hydrology, but when you're picturing what it used to look like here, this was a vibrant floodplain, a massive floodplain where a giant river coming out of the northern Rockies of Canada and the United States drained down through and flowed back into the Columbia River. So before we get too off track, let's continue with the river itself. So now you know there's a giant dam here, a 90-mile lake that contains a lot of the sediment. It comes out of northern Canada or western Canada and the Rocky Mountains. The Columbia flows out this way. And I have a map of this that I got up at the visitor center, some footage, I'll put it in there. It flows out this way, and the Kootenai comes down this way. And so when the Kootenai comes down into from Canada to the US, we put it into the lake that's behind me here. And then it goes on out, and it makes a turn to the west, and then back to the north, and goes back into Canada, and basically at the Idaho-Canada border empties into another big lake called Kootenai Lake that then flows down and empties into the Columbia River, which then turns around and comes back into the United States from Canada and heads on down to eventually become the border of Oregon and Washington and out to the ocean. So the cool thing about this, everyone, is this is still in the Redbandia world that I described in my last very popular video. So if you want to learn more about Redbandia, you know, give me one of those big caps lock rage Redbandias in the comments. It'll let me know to talk more about it. There's a cool Redbandia story here that I'm not going to get into today. I'm going to kind of let you kind of scratch at the tip of the iceberg here. But because this system is connected to the Columbia and then connected to the ocean, there's two very cool things that went on here. You got the Columbia redband trout, the same genetic strain that we have in the Deschutes Basin. There's a Columbia redband trout that's become isolated up here in the Kootenai and even remains today. It still remains basically in some of the headwater streams above waterfalls and culverts that create fish passage barriers where other fish can't go in and push them out or breed with them. And so that's why we've kind of lost them in the big river systems here, is because those fish were bred out by all the introduced rainbow trout that we brought in from the California strain. And so there's a cool redband story here. It involves the big giant trout that kind of remain in this river called the Girard redband, which is another subpopulation of the Columbia Basin redband strain that's in Canada in the Kootenai Lake. And they do come into this river, and there's a remnant strain, and that's why this river has the state record rainbow trout, a 29-pounder. That's not the story I want to tell today. So again, if you want me to come back and do a great Redbandia story and tell you about the cool stuff they're doing to save redband trout, the native rainbow trout to Montana, which is only here in the real northwest corner before all the fish, stocking went on. If you want me to tell that story some more of it, there's some cool stuff in there. You know, give me that caps lock rage Redbandia, and we'll get back out here next year and we'll tell an awesome story. What I want to stick with is the water quality, right? And so now you know where the river flows and where it goes. The nutrients basically stop in the lake back there, and this thing is sterile. And that created this algae, very different than the algae we see on the Deschutes that's taking over everything. This is an algae that thrives in a low phosphorus environment and a high nitrogen environment. And it's taken over the rocks out here on the bed, and I'm going to get some video of it and put it in while I'm talking here. But it's called rock snot, or didymo, and it is so thick out there that it basically covers over anything that is going to grow other algae, outcompetes it. And there's only a few small chironomids, midges, and small, very low-value food flies for fish in this river because of it. And so this river is basically polluted with 8 to 10 inch rainbows, and then a smaller amount of larger class fish, and then a real small class of very, very large fish that remain from this redband Girard population that comes from the Columbia system. So if you come to Montana and see water like this and you think you're going to be catching the 18s and 20s and averaging the 14s and 16s like you do out on the Bighorn or out in the eastern parts of the state, other parts of the state, they're going to be tough to find. We're going to do some fishing in this video. We're going to use the fish finder jig. Well, we're going to find some fish, but a majority of the fish that you see caught in this river are very small, 8, 10, 12 inches, because of that growth limitation due to the algae. So this is where the kind of the question begins on scratching your head and doing the chin tugging of like going back to the Deschutes River, where we have a major shift in the way the dam's been operated, and we've introduced the nutrient water into the river, and it's having a significant effect on the stream bed, and it's leading to some of this changes in the food availability for both bugs and fish. And so we have probably the most amazing stonefly hatch, or stonefly, golden stonefly, and the salmon fly hatch that I've seen in the West. Most consistent, the most robust and vigorous. You can count on the Deschutes salmon fly hatch. We did move it up in time with the dam shift, but it is good. And I think we're going to start seeing a little bit of a downturn if we already have seen that, because the algae is starting to cover over some of those places that the salmon flies and the golden stoneflies use. We're going to start seeing a reduction in those. And this is what a massive reduction looks like. There's none of them here. You know, where historically this river was a massive floodplain, it had nutrients coming down. There was probably a whole suite of stoneflies, caddisflies, and mayflies in this river that have been eliminated, and the trout population has really reduced in size and number because of it. And so the State Fish and Game, Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, I believe, is one of the greatest organizations in our country. They do a really good job here managing the fisheries. They get a lot of eyeballs on them, a lot of people wanting to do certain things, you know, whether it's the hunting or the fishing or whatever. And so they know that their constituents want to see bigger fish in this river. And so they've been studying the water quality, and they've been working with partner agencies in downriver in Idaho. The tribes at the Idaho border have been adding nutrients to the river for over a decade. They've been putting in a phosphorus drip and allowing that river to absorb some of the nutrients, and they've seen an increase in algae growth, beneficial bugs, and fish sizes and numbers because of it. And so Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, the scientists here working in behalf of the anglers in this river, have put together a project where they're going to do the same thing with a phosphorus drip coming out of that dam, add nutrients to this river to see and watch the benefits of adding nutrients to a river. I know it sounds crazy. It almost sounds like, hey, we're going to warm the river up. Right now, this river's running about 52 degrees. I think the Deschutes at home is around 56 when it comes out of the dam or so. So the water's real cold here too. You know, it probably wouldn't have been this cold in the summertime in a natural condition. So they've insulated the river just like we've talked about in other rivers. They didn't choose to address that. They feel 52 is pretty good. And this is a river that we use to keep the Columbia cooler. And this is a dam that we use to keep flooding at bay, lower down the watershed. That's why it's been built. It was completed in 1975. Its 50th anniversary was last year. And so the science that's been studied here says we need to add nutrients. I was shocked when I did this research and studied this stuff. It was very interesting that we have this juxtaposition of the way we're managing things. And that's why it leads me to the question of, did we even think about what was going on in the Deschutes, or were we so hard focused on one thing, reintroducing fish, that we forgot about the incredible Hulk green water and the incredible impact it could have, because it's incredible Hulk water. And I think we've done it now for almost 20 years, so we're getting to the point where we start seeing some very, very large impacts to it, especially from it, especially in a drought year. That's really the show today, folks. I wanted to kind of get those thoughts in your head that there's other places around that we can look to inform us on how managers are leading and being accountable for the nutrients and the management of the river and how it all ties together. And so hopefully this is kind of some information that you can use, digest, and help formulate the questions that you ask when we're trying to protect rivers like the Deschutes. Because the Kootenai is a massive river, and there's huge impacts of it from the dams on it and the development and straightening of it down below in the Idaho area. There's white sturgeon in this river, a landlocked population of white sturgeon. If you're interested in hearing about sturgeon studies, I've been a part of those as well. You can type sturgeon in there, and I'll get some sturgeon videos out. I learned some stuff from this river when I was doing sturgeon studies in California to document how sturgeon spawn and find out where they spawn, so there'd be some cool stuff I could talk about there if that interests you. But again, like I said, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm just here to tell you the things you should be thinking about. So if this is the kind of content you like, I truly appreciate your time. Come on and join the club. This is Redbandia Outdoors. I'm Scott, fish biologist turned YouTuber. I'm living the dream out here, telling you guys the story about our great rivers and the fish that are in them. See you next time, and see you out there on the river.